All right, next up, we're going to talk about the incredibly powerful filtering options of Power BI reporting. Now, within the filters view of the report pane, you'll see four primary filter types. First, you have visual level filters. Now, these are the most narrow of scope. They apply only to the specific visual in which they are defined. Next up, you have page level filters, and any filters applied at the page level will impact any visuals on that specific page or tab of the report. So they're broader than visual level filters, but more narrow than the third type, which is a report level filter. Report level filters are the broadest of all. They apply to all visuals across all pages of the report. So this is where you'd use a blanket filter that you want to just apply universally. Now keep in mind that DAX filter measures, like all or filter, can still change and overwrite the context created by a report level filter. So there's a lot of interplay here between filter context being created in different types of ways, and we'll talk more about that throughout the section. The fourth type of filter is a drill through. This one's a little bit different, and we're going to dedicate an entire video just to drill through filters, but basically they apply to pages. So it's similar level as a page level filter, but they dynamically change based on user click paths. So they're really useful tools and certainly worth a video of their own. Now, across all filters, you have a number of different settings. You've got your basic options, which are like checkboxes. You can select one, all, or multiple items. You've got top end filtering, which lets you say, filter down this visual or this page or this report to the top number of items based on some quantitative value. In this example here, we're filtering down to just the top 2 items based on total orders, which is a measure. And then you have advanced options, which look a little bit different, whether you're dealing with a value field or a text field. But this is basically the same idea as those value or label filters that you would find in Excel or in a pivot table or in other tools. So if you're dealing with values, you've got logicals like less than, greater than or equal to, etc. And for text, you have contains, does not contain, starts with, is not, is blank, etc. So let's jump back to our report and see exactly how these things work. All right, so check this out. What I want to do is add another bar chart to help demonstrate how these filters work. But instead of creating a new one from scratch and then having to recreate my formatting, I can select my existing one, press Ctrl-C to copy, and then Ctrl-V to paste another version of it right here on the canvas. And now for this one, instead of showing subcategory, I want to display this chart by category, so a little higher level. Now I can just go ahead and find the product category lookup, and instead of removing subcategory, I'm just going to take category name and drag it in above subcategory. And what it does is it shows me the highest level data, which is category, but now allows me to drill down with this button in the top left, the double down arrow, to take me down to the next level. And this works just like the matrix view worked as we were QAing and spot checking our measures, but now we're able to do this same thing with a visual representation. So I do want to make a couple tweaks to this category level view. For one, I'm going to remove the color saturation here so that it's one solid color. Then I'm going to go into the formatting, and I do need to change the title since it still says orders by subcategory. So I'm going to just change that to orders by category. And there we go. Now, as far as filtering in a report is concerned, the simplest way to filter has nothing to do with the filter pane. I don't have to drag any fields or do anything except click into my charts. And you see what's going on here? As I click into my category chart, my subcategory chart updates as well. And that's not just because I copied and pasted a second version of this chart. Even if I created a brand new one from scratch, that interaction would still take place by default. So what's happening here in technical terms is that my selection, like when I select the bikes category, for instance, is creating filter context that's impacting everything on this report page, in this case, including my subcategory chart. So with a simple click of the mouse, I'm already able to drill in and explore and see trends in this data that otherwise might be very difficult to see. And to make it even more visible, I'm going to go ahead and pull the color saturation off of my subcategory chart as well. And now you can see very clearly which subcategories fall into certain categories. So bikes, clothing, and accessories. Now to show you how the actual filter pane works, I'm going to copy this category level chart that we created, and let's go ahead and add a page and paste it right here on this page. Now returning to our exec summary, I'm going to select the category chart and scroll down to my filters pane right here. And you can see by default, it's pulled in all of the fields and dimensions that are currently part of my chart. And you can go ahead and drill in and see your filtering options right there for each. And by default, these are placed in the visual level filters window of that filters pane. So for instance, I could say, I only want this chart or this visual to show bikes, or only bikes and clothing. And you see how those changes are only being impacted in this chart. They're only reflected here. My subcategories still show all of my subcategories across all categories. So this filter is essentially constricted to the universe of just this visual. So those are my basic filtering options. Let's quickly take a look at some of the others. I could say, show me the top N items, which are categories in this case. Let's say top 2, since we only have 3 to work with. And the by value is basically how are you defining top 2? How are you defining those ranks? So we could say, let's show us the top 2 by profit. And we click apply. We get accessories and bikes. Clothing disappears because clothing did not make the top 2 as far as profit driving categories are concerned. So we change our mind. You can click this little eraser icon to clear that filter. And then you've got your advanced options here, which really aren't that advanced. They're just those text or label specific fields like contains, does not contain, start with. These are pretty straightforward. So I added a filter for categories starting with B and applied it. There you go. I only see bikes. Now if I say does not contain bikes and apply it, now I see accessories and clothing. So these are all very user-friendly, very straightforward. The most important thing to remember is the scope in which your filter is applied. So everything we just did was visual level. It only impacted this chart. Now let's practice a page level filter. So what I'll need to do is grab a product category name again. I'm going to drop it into page level. And now watch what happens when I select bikes. See how both charts on the page were impacted? Same thing if I add clothing and then add components. Well, components weren't sold, so if we add accessories, there you go. Now we're back to 100%. So we're using the same filtering tools, except now instead of just impacting one chart, it's impacting our second chart and potentially any other charts that might exist on this page. Now the important thing to note, let's go ahead and select bikes alone again, is that if we jump to page 2, this visual is on a different page, so it's not impacted by a page level filter that was implemented on the exec summary tab. Only visuals on this tab, on this page, will be impacted by a page level filter. So let's go ahead and clear that one. And again, we're going to cover drill throughs in its own separate deep dive. But what I'm going to do is grab another copy of category name and pull it into the report level filters. And now very similar idea, select bikes, filter down, and click to page 1. This one's filtered down as well. So as you can see, report level filters are the universal filters that impact everything in the entire file. So let's go ahead and clear these. I'll erase that. Don't need a page level filter here. So now a little bit of formatting, rearranging here. I'm just going to make these a little bit skinnier. And like I said, we're going to keep kind of tweaking and adjusting as we go. You can follow along exactly if you'd like, or you can kind of follow along loosely or not follow along at all. It's totally up to you. So I'm going to start kind of with something like this. And again, we could snap to grid if we wanted it to be exact and perfect. But this looks good for now. We're going to tweak some things a little bit more as we go. So those are the filter settings and the core types of filters in the Power BI report view. So as you can see, they're really, really powerful, and they're going to allow us to do some really interesting and pretty advanced things. So now that we've covered the field options, the formatting options, and the filtering options, the next phase of this section is going to be demo mode. So from here, we're just going to play with all different types of visuals. We're going to add matrix views, slicers, timelines, KPIs, text cards, maps, tree maps, gauges, and so on and so forth. We're going to add a whole bunch of visuals to build out this dashboard. And then from there, we'll start exploring some of the more advanced or nuanced concepts, like adding drill through filters, customizing visual interactions, adding bookmarks, parameters, and some other really interesting tools. So there you have it. Those are your Power BI report filter options.